Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Time Team, where we'll be highlighting everything we've got lined up for you this year. And welcome to the TV studios here at Bournemouth University with not a muddy boot in sight, and a live studio audience for us to engage with. Hello everyone. And over here, we've got a very talented team of second-year media students. Hello, folks. And they'll be filming, lighting, and producing the entire show. Huge, huge respect. And finally, around here, we have our big screens and comfy sofas, where I'll be joined throughout the show by members of our team and very special guests, where we'll unpack the upcoming investigations, excavations, and film releases that lie ahead in 2025. And I'm joined by Time Team's Meg Russell. Hello, Meg.
Hiya, Derek.
And Operation Nightingale's Richard Osgood. How are you doing,
Derek.
Richard?
Hello.
This is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely to be inside.
And through the magic of the internet, we can bring you other team members into the conversation. Both Helen Geake and John Gator are out there somewhere standing by, with more familiar faces over there in the audience. And we've got special guests lined up to talk about fascinating books, unusual projects, and historical reconstructions and underwater exploration. Anything I'm forgetting, Meg?
Well, Derek, we've got all the latest on when last year's excavations will finally reach your screens. We have Dani with the archaeology headlines, and I've got my own upcoming project, which I'd like to open up to the viewers.
Ooh, that all sounds intriguing. And what are you looking forward to, Richard?
I think on a gloomy winter's day to be in a trench in the sunshine in summer.
Oh, that does sound nice. But to wet your whistles, here's a taster of just some of the amazing films we have coming out of our edits very soon.
Cern Abbas, home of the famously enigmatic, baton-wielding and very nude giant. But beneath his feet lie the remains of a lost Benedictine abbey.
So here we have, the archaeology of the dissolution of the monasteries right in front of our eyes.
We are here at Norton Disney and it's day one of our 3-day excavation.
Walking along this high street, you really get a sense of the community. We've got test pits here and in the back garden over there.
This is the first site I've been to, and I've agreed with everything Stuart has said.
Never mind that, does the archaeology agree with you and Stuart?
No.
Welcome to Vlokos. We've left the geophysics and the bad weather at home and we're back for another season.
The geophysics are showing us monumental structures.
Oh no.
Oh no.
It's always the last day, isn't it? It has to be.
we talked about that.
On this day, 80 years ago, 10 young Americans took to the air from RAF Netishall in the flying fortress, the Little Boy Blue.
The sky would have been filled with enormous American bombers.
It's a very important mission in the U.S. context to provide answers and closure for the families and the comrades of the fallen.
Well, we've made it. We're here at Poverty Point. So this is pretty cool. Effectively got the keys to a World Heritage Site. That doesn't happen every day, does it?
3.5 millennia ago, hunter-gatherers built massive infrastructure, the likes of which just weren't seen in the Western Hemisphere. But why?
This whole year's been quite emotional. Orkney has that magic about it, and particularly the Nessa Brodga.
I wish I could go back and thank the people who built it 5,000 years ago to say thank you for what you've done. I'll never forget it, ever.
We've been trying to work out why the Royal Burial Ground is where it is.
If you understand this field, you can understand the whole of Sutton Hoo, including the mounds.
Slap-diddle-do, absolutely fantastic.
Oh my word.
And that is a heck of a lot of content. Meg, what are you looking forward to most there?
There is so much. We've got so much to come. I'm going to be selfish and pick Norton Disney because that's the last time all three of us were together. And it just, that community feel and getting the whole village together was so fantastic. I can't wait to relive that.
How about you, Richard?
Well, I can't believe you managed to do all that and such significant sites. Well, for me, I suppose the other end of the spectrum, it's being able to share the whole story of the American bomber crew and the B-17, because it's about people, and that's such a fundamental story, I think.
That looked quite an emotional story. Was there anything particularly amazing you found?
Yes, I think is the answer to that one. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of discoveries on that brought back that very, very human story, and given there were so many veterans on the team that had gone through the sorts of emotions that bomber crew had gone through, I think that was actually quite powerful, I think.
Now, obviously, the thing I'm looking forward to most is Greece in there. But I have to address the elephant in the room. Why on earth does Jimmy get sent off to America to film stuff? When's it going to be our turn?
I know, we go up north and he goes there.
Maybe
so
you need
unfair.
a new agent or something.
I was going to say, Jimmy's doing something right, isn't he? But John as well on Orkney, how good does that look?
Looks fantastic. I only got to visit as a visitor, as a member of the public, but I could just feel that emotion there. It was such an emotive experience, and yeah, I can't wait to see that.
And of course, they had Cern Abbas, which, I mean, what a project that is.
I mean, you can't go wrong with that sort of iconography, can you? You've got that astonishing giant to start with, but then a really incredible discovery there. But you've got World Heritage Sites and scheduled monuments throughout that series. It's what to look forward to, eh?
It's going to be a huge year, but something that came out at the end of last year and has had some incredible feedback so far is your video at Cherrington.
The Cherrington site.
In July 2024, we joined Operation Nightingale excavating an Anglo-Saxon cemetery in Gloucestershire, where previous excavations recovered a princely burial of a boy buried with a sword, shield and full warrior accoutrements. I mean, how good was that? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, it's perplexing in some ways. We've still got a lot of questions from that Roman building. It wasn't what we expected at all, but the Saxon site, really exciting.
It was, I mean, you've seen it. What an incredible video that was.
I know, it was like watching a drama. I was so confused, and then there were so many different ideas going around, but it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
But I must admit, one thing that has been heavily commented on is the cliffhanger, Richard.
Hello.
Hi.
So what do we think we've got? Right. Oh Lord. We need to check what's on the geophysics here at this point as well. We can't really get involved in uncovering it because who knows what might be with it, and the preservation certainly at this stage looks quite good. I think we've seen enough to positively identify it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very shallow, isn't it? I mean, it's right down on the bottom of the topsoil.
Yeah, it was underneath the brush.
That's almost in a kind of emergency situation.
Yes, on the final day.
On the final day.
So what we'll do is photograph it as it is, put a little scale in, North Arrow.
Yeah, yep.
We'll GPS it in.
Yeah, so we can compare what's on the geophysics.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. And then we'll carefully cover it over, and it'll have to be dealt with quite quickly.
Quite quickly, yes.
Come on, Richard. You can't leave us hanging there. What happened next?
I can't tell you. You're going to have to watch it. We did go back, and Time Team laid on the usual terrible weather. It was flooding, and I had to dig drainage channels to make sure it didn't completely put the trench underwater. But it was at the upper end of our expectations, I can tell you that. Some really significant finds and should make for a fantastic programme.
Richard, you're a tease. You're a tease now. I know it's in the edit at the moment, so that's going to come out soon, do you think?
Yeah, really soon, I think, and it's definitely going to be worth the wait, and a very important site.
And Meg, you've got some interesting plans for 2025, haven't you?
Yeah, 2025 is already so busy. It's filled with people and projects and initiatives already looking at mindfulness and archaeology. But to start this off, I really wanted to showcase the sanctuary, which is right here at Bournemouth University.
I want to show something that is very close to my heart, and that is the Sanctuary project, and it's just tucked behind these buildings here. As I turn around, there it is. Now, Sanctuary was started by Bournemouth University students, staff and people from the local community because we really wanted a space to get together, to be connected with each other, to make friends, but also because we had a joined interest in ancient craft and experimental archaeology. We were very kindly gifted this polytunnel by Bournemouth University, and this is how it all started 2 years ago. We set this up as our base, and we started growing seedlings for herbs and vegetables. Last year we grew flax in this bed to create sustainable linen, and we grew woad on this side to do some really nice blue dye. This is our Roman kitchen garden. In 2025, this is absolutely what we're going to be focusing on. We want to grow enough vegetables and herbs to make a lovely Roman feast for the end of spring into summer. This was a very whistle-stop tour of the sanctuary and our gardens, and if you're interested in seeing what we get up to in 2025, then you may just have to come back.
Oh, Meg, you've got to tell us a bit more about the project now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really key to go first into our wording. So we're going to use the word mindful to talk about these types of projects, because using the term mental health, I think, can be quite negative, because some people will think that these projects aren't for them because they don't necessarily see themselves as being ill enough. But it's also not just about the mind. It's about overall feeling having a positive feeling of happiness, feeling purpose, feeling valued in your life. It's being able to see a positive future and being able to do daily activities. And what the sanctuary is really based on, and actually what a lot of projects are already doing, is the 5 ways to well-being, which is being pushed by the NHS, and that is being connected with other people, learning new skills, being physically active, taking notice or being in the present moment, and giving to other people. And I think that was really important, and experimental archaeology and archaeology in general already lends itself so well to that. And we really wanted to show that with the sanctuary that could be done on a tarmac landscape, because some projects accidentally are inaccessible to some people, going out into nature, going out into the archaeological landscape. And we really wanted to prove that it could be portable. But everything that I've said, Richard already knows, because you already do this, and my work has really been inspired by you and your work.
Well, that's brilliant. I mean, I loved seeing that. And everyone's got a happy space, haven't they, I hope? And for me, it's drawing. I love doing drawing, and it's something that escapes maybe the day-to-day drudgery, or if you're thinking bad things, just, I don't know, escape and do something. But archaeology is maybe a unique space where you've got people that like acting or being in touch with the earth or seeing big landscapes, doing drawing, making pots, making foodstuffs, growing things and bringing it all together. We're in a wonderful position that archaeology can do all of those things. And I think more power to your elbow. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant to see that this is going on. And I think we maybe need to do more of this sort of thing. And archaeology is, I think, a perfect space for it.
So what are the next steps, Meg?
Well, I'm glad you asked. What we're thinking about doing throughout 2025 is going out and visiting different crafters, experimental archaeologists, artists, archaeologists that are already engaging with well-being and archaeology. And we want to showcase them, yes, as interviews, but also as slow TV. We want to be able to capture this more mindful way of watching a potter make a pot, and not just have all these rapid cuts, actually just show them doing their work. But what I really want to do is bring in the audience. I'm really interested in building that team, because the audience are the team. And so it'd be really great to have that audience participation reacting to our work, and through whatever medium you like, say if it's drawing, if it's painting, poetry, pottery, crochet, whatever it is, photography. It would be so fantastic to see people's reactions to these segments each month, and then create a scrapbook of what people send in to have a tangible example of everything to look back on at the end of 2025.
Oh, man, it would be so lovely to get the whole Time Team community involved in well-being and archaeology. That sounds amazing. Now, one story we keep being asked about by you, our viewers, is what's happening with the Sutton Hoo ship build. Since 2016, the Sutton Hoo Ships Company have been using experimental archaeology to plan and construct an 88-foot, full-scale replica of the famous wooden ship. Excavated in 1939, the ship sat within a burial mound of an Anglo-Saxon king at Sutton Hoo in East Anglia.
We're now sat in the midships model. This is the full-scale mock-up of the forward half of the burial chamber. And we're actually going to set this in the dock. And as the tide comes up and down, we'll then be able to experiment as to the rowing techniques that might have been used in the original. But until we actually try to do it ourselves, we won't really know if we've got the internal layout of the ship right.
Hopefully this is going to go in the water in a sec. The low tide's at 8:30 and it's now 5 to 9. So we're hopefully going to get it in the water, and because we've got to put ballast in it as well, because we don't want it to float. There'll be a little bit of buoyancy in it. And also we need to spin this 180 degrees so that this angle, this is the bit of angle that goes against the key heading.
Part lot of experimental archaeology is always about actually really trying things. We spend a lot of time, you know, around desks looking at plans, drawings and what have you, but when it actually comes down to it, the only thing that will ever tell us exactly how this will work is if we actually try it.
Okay, so back in 2018, when we actually built this model and had it on dry land, it really served quite a lot of purposes for us because we used it to train the volunteers how to actually, you know, create the planking, but we also experimented a lot with the nails, the rivets and rods, to see, you know, what they would look like in formation, the different sizes of them and the different materials. But what we found since having the model outside, within one evening of just light drizzle, all of these roads, as you can see, were very rusty, and over the last couple of weeks, while it's been in the water, they've got worse and worse. As some sort of experimental archaeology, what we've done is we've cleaned some of them off and we've treated them with other things that we're also using on the ship that we knew were authentic to that period. So we've got a few of them over there that have linseed oil on them, some that have the combination of linseed oil, pine tar and beeswax that we're actually using for the caulking between the planking. You know, being in the water is not just about the rowing and, you know, where people are sitting, it's about everything else that we can possibly find out in a few weeks before we sort of launch into the main build.
And we are lucky enough to be joined by the ship's company project manager, Jack Barnard, who we've just seen in that film. Jack, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Oh, Jack, what a wonderful backdrop you've got there. Is that the ship?
Yes, it is. I'll move aside slightly so you can actually see it where it's being made. It's quite impressive. I'm standing right in the centre of the hull here. So I'm standing on one of the frames that was recently been put in. So no, it is quite impressive.
That looks absolutely incredible. I was lucky enough to come and visit you a few months ago when we were filming at Sutton Hoo, and it looks like it's come on a little bit since then. But am I right in thinking you've got to move house soon?
Yes, we have. Yes, we're only allowed to stay in this building for a limited amount of time. So we have been over the last year looking for new premises, and we're very happy to say that we have found somewhere. But it's going to take a lot of development and you know, a bit of a rebuild before we get there. But we can't move this ship until the hull is at least intact. So, you know, we will continue here probably for about another 18 months, I would think, and then at the same time, we'll develop the new site ready to go there to continue the story.
So in terms of moving the ship, will there be an element of experimental archaeology involved in that as well? Because presumably the Anglo-Saxons had to move these boats overland. Will that be a part of the journey of the boat?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, there's only one way this ship is going, and it's that way, through that door and straight onto the river. If we were to go in the other direction, we're over a railway line, so we've got to take it out on the water. We're sort of in discussions already about the launch of the ship. We'd like to do it as authentically as possible, but as with all things in 2025, there are health and safety rules that would need to be followed. So whereas at the moment I've got this romantic notion of using the local Shire horses, if we can, to sort of, you know, hoist it into the water from here. It's not very far beyond that door, so we haven't got far to go. But, you know, it's going to be a grand occasion, and we're going to have to make sure it's both safe and as authentic as possible without actually damaging the ship.
Now, this must take a lot of timber. Do you have enough?
Well, we need sort of timber to be just in time. We can't have it sitting around drying out because every part of this ship is used with green oak is for the planking. And the reason it's green is because the axes can only be used with wet wood. You couldn't use an axe on modern dried timber because they, you know, just be too much like hard work. So we have to create a pipeline of oak coming in. And one of the problems that we encountered was, whereas our first trees that we found, which have all been fantastic, we could always place them somewhere because there was always somewhere where a slightly smaller plank could go. So if you come and visit us here, you'll see there's an awful lot more planking in the stern and the bow, and the central sections are less planked because those boards are much wider. And so we had to have a bit of a campaign via social media to find some much larger trees to make these very wide boards that we need at the centre. And that kind of held us back in this year because we didn't anticipate that. Because we're cleaving trees in a traditional way. So nowadays, you know, a trunk is put through a sawmill and the planks are all, cut through in layers. We don't do it that way. We cleave them, so into half, quarter, down to an eighth or a 16th, and you've then got this triangular shaped wedge that you need to get your plank out of. So if you could imagine what that looks like, you waste a lot of wood here and here in order to get your plank out of the centre. So we needed much larger trees than we thought. So that has been a struggle, but we have now just had 2 trees delivered from Woburn, which is fantastic. And we've got 3 trees coming up from Willer, which I believe is Surrey, but I'm sure I'll be corrected on that. They're yet to be felled because, again, there are felling seasons. You can't fell trees all year round. And also, if you fell a tree and you need to extract it, if you don't want to damage the land, you need to do it when the land is as hard and as sort of frozen as it possibly can be. So we're now in a bit of a race to get those 3 trees felled and off the site, ready to be transported up to here. Not by horse, I have to say. They'll be coming on a lorry.
And tell us about those rusty rivets. And are you worried about the one that Derek made?
No, well, we expect them to rust. Some of them, even in here, in the long shed, some of them have rusted. And the rust in itself kind of protects them. We were just interested to kind of experiment to see, would they have done anything to try and protect them, back in the day. But the experiments that we did, even when we used the mixtures of pine tar and beeswax and all of those things that we knew they had to hand, it's made no difference. Very quickly, the salt water washed that away, and those rivets have gone back to being rusty again. That model is still in the water. I'm not in it quite so frequently because obviously it's quite cold. But the rivets that are in there have rusted over, so we believe that was just how it was, and so that's what we'll work with. Our intention is to keep this ship on the water for as long as we can, to the point of it itself telling us it's had enough. And I believe probably the ironwork will be one of the things that does limit its life.
Fantastic, and I cannot wait to see what happens next and can't wait to keep following the story. Thank you so much, Jack. What an incredible experimental archaeology effort. Have you been up there before, Richard?
I haven't. I'm so familiar with the shape of the vessel from those famous photographs of Basil Brown's, but that is just the rivets, and to be able to see what it might once have looked like and its capabilities in the water. I mean, what a wonderful project.
We will continue to follow the story of the move and the mighty oak through 2025. But for those who want to know more now, you're in luck. Time Team's podcast producer Martin Williams has just recorded a further interview all about the move and the next steps of the build, which you can find on the Time Team official podcast, which came out earlier this week.
We've been getting very positive feedback from the listeners and the presenters. I think Martin and Helen are having way too much fun making it.
And we've got Helen on the line right now. Hello, Helen, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. It's really exciting seeing you in these comfy chairs in a proper studio.
I know, we're properly spoilt here. There's a green room and everything. It's lovely.
Brilliant. Well, I think I heard you talking about the podcast. And giving us a bit of a shout out for that, which is absolutely brilliant, because I have so much enjoyed we've made 11 episodes so far, and I think 10 of them have come out, and there's one more that's ready to go. And we found that it's proved really popular because it is so incredibly easy to listen to. You can just get it on your phone, as any podcast. And it's perfect if you're busy, if you're travelling, or if you're cooking, or if you're out in the garden or something, or even, as I've been doing, listening out on a run. And it's also a bit different in that Martin, the producer and my co-host, he's an absolute newcomer to archaeology. So we aren't two experts talking jargon. Instead, over the 11 episodes we've done now, we've just become two friends chatting, and it's been enormous fun. And I know that all history podcasts are popular, but of course, the Time Team podcast is entirely different. It's a bit magazine-y, it's a bit like this show that you're doing now. And we have news of amazing discoveries all around the world. Some in the field, yes, but a lot in the lab or the library. That's often where the real discoveries are made. And we can do deep dive interviews with the people concerned. And we have chats with members of Time Team. We find out how they got involved in the show, what their job entails, what it's really like behind the scenes. And then one of my favourite bits, we have questions from Patreons. And those are often really perceptive questions that make you think. I mean, things like, that I'd never even thought about, like how did the Romans get upstairs? I mean, that one has been bugging me for a while, ever since it was asked. So as I say, podcast about 40 minutes long, and if you run as slowly as I do, I have found that is the perfect length for 3 miles or 5 kilometres. So if you've done the couch to 5K, move on to the Time Team podcast.
Oh, fantastic. So Time Team podcast to join you on a 3-mile run. Thank you so much, Helen. Oh, I do love the podcast. It gets me through many a drive.
Absolutely, and I think we should do the quiz again because that Christmas quiz was fantastic.
You stumped me on that quiz. You stumped me. Now, not all of our digs need to be muddy, and one project we've been following is taking place under an ancient timber roof with test pits suspended 10 feet into the air.
You might remember a site we shared with you back in Time Team News in November 2023.
Shakespeare has been in the news recently for other reasons. A historic theatre in Norfolk has recently uncovered 15th century floorboards that were once trodden by Shakespeare himself.
Work has moved on and we've been there filming the remarkable developments.
I loved this theatre. I played it many times. This is the oldest working theatre in the country and probably the world. It has a recorded history of drama from the 1400s right up until the present day. And that's unique. To have all of that drama going on in one place, one room, is incredible.
So is this a kind of trial trench?
This is a trial trench, exactly right.
So what are we seeing here? This is a joist for this floor.
That's right, the 1950s floor. And then below that, you've got the real prize, which is this original guild floor from 1417, 1420. You've got the very boards on which the bard trod. So when we say we're treading the boards with Shakespeare, we mean the actual boards here, which is really exciting.
Yeah. I'm actually walking in the footsteps of Shakespeare. He would have seen this. I see it as old. He would have seen it as old.
Yes.
He could have put his hand up.
He could have touched that. Yeah, absolutely. We're able to tell the stories of Shakespeare being here, and of course the Guild of St George and the dragons and the pirates that founded this guild and probably got the money for it. I mean, we've found some of the missing roof timbers. And they've been missing for a very long time. I've been searching for them personally for 5 years. So what we've got here are some 15th century, hopefully, guild timbers that were in the roof that we've seen in the guild hall, but then were taken out in the 1950s and have been in storage since then. But they might just be the Georgian proscenium arch ceiling, so from the 1700s. You can see what colour they might have been, because you can see little bits of the original paint colour. And of course, you can probably guess, being St George, that the colours we found are red and white. But we seem to have a general consensus that we can put them back into the ceiling. So that will be an extraordinary thing to see. So maybe they had like a doorway or something, and then they thought, actually, it'd be much better if we had a religious cupboard, and they sort of made it smaller.
Maybe the chapel was outside. Maybe originally we were thinking the chapel was going to be outside the main body of the guild hall, and then they brought it in.
Yeah. And I think that's something so exciting that archaeology is able to fine-tune our understanding of the historical documents, and that's what's happened on this site.
So I think that's our medieval floor surface, which is about half a metre down. At least half a metre down.
That's the cuts left by a spade going in. So that's a spade going into that surface hundreds of years ago, which has just been preserved there.
That's amazing. So to make your speech, you'd come forwards.
On and forwards and down to declaim to the audience where you're stood.
Where I'm stood, so I can say, the quality of mercy is not strained, it droppeth as a gentle dew from heaven upon the place beneath. I've just got a bit of a shiver down my spine thinking I'm in the same place as Garrick's comedian and I'm in the same place as Shakespeare. I've just turned round and spoken a bit of Shakespeare in a place that Shakespeare might well have spoken.
Yeah.
Oof.
And through the magic of the internet, we are now joined by Tim Fitzhyam, the creative director at St George's Theatre, who's been in the Houses of Parliament all day. Hello, Tim, how are you doing?
Hello there, it's lovely to see you in the studio. This is very exciting. It's like a Time Team version of Parkinson. It's amazing. Really, really happy to be part of this, so thank you for having me on. Yes, I've been on a virtual parliamentary group today, so I didn't have to go into the Parliament, which was
really very handy. So again, through the medium of the internet, very like this, we were able to make it all work.
Now, Tim, as I understand it, this is where the Upstart Crow review happened. Obviously, all theatres are special, but how does it feel to feel that weight of history when you're standing there?
Yeah, it's not really connected to the Upstart Crow review at all, I'm afraid. But the point about the Upstart Crow review that is important to the theatre is that review, of course, of Shakespeare was a negative review, but it linked Shakespeare to being a player as well as a writer in 1594, which means that in 1592-3, when he came to the Guildhall in King's Lynn, it's highly likely that he was on stage as well as being a writer. So that is the key link there between the theatre itself and the Upstart Crow review that you're quoting. So it's more the fact that we know that Shakespeare was both player and writer in the early part of his career, rather than just being the famous writer that we know him for today. So it's the action of Shakespeare as a player being on stage, and the fact that we've now got the theatre still up and running in King's Lynn, where his company did come and did perform in 1592-93, that we are then able to say Shakespeare was almost certainly a player in that company, and therefore would have trod the boards just like the other players in that company in those years in our theatre here in King's Lynn.
Now, coming at this sort of with my archaeological hat on, it was amazing to see that VT of the suspended test pit above the floorboards. I mean, it must be an incredible experience to see those exposed. But the thing that struck me most was those spade marks. Can you talk us through a little bit more about those?
Yes, the spade marks we found just outside, and the Guildhall site is on a part of King's Lynn, sort of North Lynn we call it really, or mid to North Lynn, and that King's Lynn has constantly moved north throughout history. So it started off in a place that we know as South Lynn, it then extended north to Bishop's Lynn, and then it moved north into where the Guildhall site is itself, and it's reclaimed riverbank really over the years, and so they've tried to step the riverbank out. And what we proved in that test pit, which is just outside the Guildhall, is that that stepping theory that we'd always had of them banking the river was absolutely on the money, and we were able to sort of begin to date that to around about the Saxon period, and those spade marks are around about Anglo-Saxon, which is incredible to see, and you could see how very fresh and clear they were in what was, you know, at one point the riverbank, and the riverbank's simply been moved about 1,000 metres to allow us to have the ground on which the Guildhall itself is built in or around 1390, 1400. So that test pit, that tiny test pit, that 1 metre square test pit, was able to prove something that we've often thought was the case in King's Lynn, but never been able to physically actually prove or in any way date. So it's been a hugely successful test pit, that. Really exciting.
I mean, that is amazing. So what's next for the project?
Well, it's absolutely brilliant. We're just entering a phase now where we are going to stop our performances in the Guildhall Theatre for a little bit. We're going to stop them in mid-February. And then we're going to start taking up all the previous floors. So we're going to take up the 1963 floor, and we're going to record that before we take it up. And then underneath that, we've got the 1951 floor and the theatre space there, and we're going to record all of that. And then we're going to take the 1951 floor up. And then underneath that, we've got the Victorian layer, the Georgian layer of the flooring, and we're going to take those up after recording them. And then we're going to be down on the 1417, 1420 floor level, which is huge. That's all, we think, supported by that 1417, 1420 floor. And so we'll be able to see this expanse of flooring, which is about the size of a tennis court, which is the largest expanse, we think, of 15th century timber framed flooring on a first floor level left anywhere in the country. And so from sort of April, May, June, July, that floor is going to be exposed, and hopefully people are going to be able to come and see it for themselves for the first time in a very long time, and for a limited time only, sadly. And we're going to be throwing the book at it archaeologically to try and get as much information as we possibly can out of that floor, because it is such an incredible and special find. We just don't know what we're going to be able to discern in that floor, what we're going to be able to tell about it. Hopefully we'll be able to tell something about the early theatre arrangement within the room. We don't know, but we'll try. We might even find some stuff that's hidden down the cracks of the floorboards. We don't know, but again, we'll try. dry. So it's all to play for, really, in terms of opening up that floor and finding out as much information as we possibly can. It's a really exciting time for the project, and we're going to be fundraising more, of course, to keep the fundraising coming in, because we're trying to take the roof off and put the roof back on, as you know, and do up the venue and keep it safe for another 600 years.
That's fantastic, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. Thank you so much for joining us.
Now on to Book of the Month. We asked you what books you'd like to see us cover, and we had a strong recommendation from Barbara Kaser, one of our Patreons, for this. It's The Other Ancient Civilisations, Decoding Archaeology's Less Celebrated Cultures. And we've got the author Raven Todd da Silva here to tell us all about it. Hi, Raven.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Now, I have to admit, I was absolutely inspired reading your book. I read it in a whole day, and I'm not the fastest reader, so that's a real recommendation. Can you tell us about where the inspiration came from for this?
Yeah, so when I got the opportunity to write this, I really wanted to use the opportunity to highlight all of, as the title says, the other ancient civilizations and cultures. So I wanted to give the 15 minutes of fame to all of the other amazing archaeological and ancient and historic cultures that have been existing all around the world for so long. They're, and they deserve that 15 minutes of fame. So I wanted to just kind of highlight them and give people a jumping off point to inspire them to learn more about history than just the big, 4 or 5 that you normally learn about in popular media.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people will probably know you from Dig It with Raven, which is your accessibility social media mission. And can you tell us how does that, why is that accessibility important, and how does it feed through your social media channels and then into this book?
I think for so long, especially archaeological education, it's always been in that ivory tower of academia, right? And it has been gatekept for quite a while, especially the spaces where we disseminate that information. Universities, museums, they are generally for one very particular type of person historically. And when I started the YouTube channel, I just thought, this is the way that we can sort of break that mold. And we have so many amazing archaeological science communicators now, just all over the internet, on every platform. And it's amazing. And we're able to actually interact with people who have always said, I've always wanted to study archaeology, but I actually got a real job, which is probably what we all should have done. And they just have made different decisions, or they just never thought that it was for them. And giving that voice to the other people that are interested in it and maybe just never had that opportunity to get into it is something that I'm just really passionate about.
Something I love about the premise of the book is, as you said, kind of highlighting these other civilizations, cultures, communities. How did you go about picking case studies for that?
It was so difficult. I had a list, I think the long list was about 45.
Wow.
And then I got the timeline for how long I had to write the book, and I had to very much whittle that down. So what I ended up doing was opening a map and sort of just plotting them out to make sure I could get as broad as possible, get through every continent, every area of the world. And then I also wanted to highlight ones that would kind of be a little bit familiar, not every single one, but a few of them, where it would just give you that jumping off point to go, oh, I might have heard about them, or they sound familiar. I'm going to dive deeper. So for example, instead of Egypt, we talk about the Nubians in the book. Instead of ancient Greece, I go into the Minoans. Instead of Rome, you do the Etruscans. So you kind of have that familiarity still, so you still have that one foot there to open the door for people, but then I go far off field, like the Lapita in Oceania that maybe not anyone has really heard of. And so I wanted to have a really nice, healthy balance of that to give people that accessibility.
Amazing. The book itself almost has a feel of a journey to it in that sense. Are these journeys you've taken, have you trodden in the footsteps of these communities?
I can admit to only being to one of them, unfortunately. Like I've done a few Etruscan sites, but the only work I've done at the biggest one is at Troy for the Hittites. But now I have definitely added a lot more other places to my list. I will be going to Petra in about 2 weeks, so that hits another chapter. So hopefully we'll just start checking them all off.
Fantastic. And talk to me about the choice of the word other and why you've chosen that as opposed to some other wording that other people might use for these communities.
So I know that everyone usually says, the forgotten people or the lost civilizations, all of those big hype words. And I have a problem with the word lost personally, because a lot of the ones that I spoke about, they were never really lost. And it is that sort of sense of using that to separate it from the people who have actually been interacting or kind of, come from these cultures for thousands of years. And who are people usually call it a lost civilizations. They're the ones that have come in from somewhere else, usually from the West, and in a colonizing sort of way, discovered something when actually it never needed to be discovered in the first place because everyone living around it already knew about it. So I didn't want to use anything like that. I just wanted to use the word other as in like, oh, well, you've heard of this one. How about this other one? And give everyone that chance to actually to show them that way.
Amazing. And also, what do you think we can learn as modern archaeologists? Do you think any of us are still guilty of falling into that trap?
Oh gosh. I say we all are. It is something that it's the sensationalization of archaeology that gets people watching, it gets people in the door, it gets people buying books. And as long as we're aware of what we're doing, I think it's just something that we have to be conscious of and doing our best to not fall into the same traps of what previous archaeologists or historians have done in that sensationalization of everything.
And so you cover the Scythians, the Nubians, the Hittites, the Nok. Do you have a specific story that you're particularly interested in or one that really drove the book?
One of my favorite ones is the Marajoara from Brazil, and they were on Marajo Island, which is one of the biggest islands off of the Amazon River. So it's just like the mouth of the Amazon River, there's a huge island. It's pretty much the size of the Netherlands, so it's actually quite big. And they built these mounds. They lived at the lowest parts of this island, but they built mounds so that way when it flooded, they would still be safe from the floodwaters. Not everyone lived on a mound, unfortunately. They'd get their land flooded. But it was amazing to see how they would just build these mounds in the face of, just choosing to be somewhere that got flooded every year. And then they would get around on canoes. And I just loved that visual when I was writing and researching about them. They were also the very first ones that we know of so far to use the polychrome tradition in that art form in the Amazon. And they had what we think is a matrilocal society, which, yes, it's always fun to write about those and kind of flip people's minds about certain things. And they lived in these amazing long houses where, the man married into the woman's family and everyone just kind of lived communally, and it was beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Raven, for coming and sitting on our sofa and for giving us the opportunity to travel the world with this book.
Thank you so much for having me.
And with that, it's time for the archaeological news headlines from the UK and around the world with Dani.
Thanks, Derek. As always, there's lots happening across the archaeology world, with 2025 getting off to an exciting start. Now, it might only be January, but spare a thought for some archaeologists who are already out there in the field. The frost and frozen mud haven't stopped the team at Cotswold Archaeology from wrapping up warm and venturing out into the English countryside to make new discoveries. We caught up with Senior Project Officer Chris Leonard, who's investigating a site in Gloucestershire that's providing insights into the transition from the Iron Age to Roman Britain.
And we're out in the heart of the Cotswolds on a lovely, crisp, sunny winter's day, doing a trial trench evaluation. So we've come to have a look and see if there's any archaeology, and luckily we found some, so we're out having a bit of an investigation to see what we've got.
The area is familiar to Time Team from an earlier investigation nearby, back in Series 8.
In this field here, we've found evidence of Middle Iron Age settlement. This is really interesting for us because just behind the digger over there in that field is where Time Team did a dig in 2000 and uncovered a very early Roman villa on top of a late Iron Age enclosure ditch. So we think we've now got this story of this landscape that goes from the Middle Iron Age, where people are in the banjo enclosures, through to the later Iron Age enclosure that Time Team found, and then on to the early villa. But we get this sense that they're able to move up with the times, and especially into the Roman periods. We think they're one of the earliest adopters of villas in the Cotswolds. So we get the impression that it's quite an important local family.
And one early find in particular brings home a personal connection to those people.
One of the few finds that we've got so far is a child's brooch from the Roman period. So that kind of brings that aspect in as well, because when you're thinking about villas especially, you're thinking about big agricultural dynasties, you don't always see the children. So it's nice that one of the first finds that we've got has been this little child's brooch. So this little site in a small contained area gives us quite a big chunk of Roman and pre-Roman activity and history, and we can actually see one group of people, how they're progressing through these different phases, which will be very interesting, I think.
Look out for more of that story coming up on the podcast. Elsewhere across the globe, an elaborate private bathhouse complex has been uncovered in Pompeii in what's been described as a once-in-a-century discovery. It can be likened to a home spa spread across several areas with hot, warm and cold rooms, including a plunge pool, mosaics and artwork. Now, while public bathhouses are commonly found across the Roman world, it's particularly unusual to find one, especially of this size, attached to a private residence. And this highlights the wealth and status of its owners. Gabriel Zuchtriegel, director of Pompeii Archaeological Park, has noted that it would have been an important place for high-ranking families to display their wealth, discussing business, brokering deals and entertaining guests. A collection of medieval crowns and royal regalia, including sceptres and beautifully fashioned jewellery, has been discovered hidden in a niche in a cathedral in Lithuania. These priceless treasures stem from the 15th and the 16th centuries, were found wrapped in newspaper sheets from September 1939, likely hidden from looters at the outbreak of World War II. Now, while they'd long been known to exist, originally in the royal tombs at Vilnius Cathedral, their precise location was unconfirmed until now. They're set to go on display following conservation. Now, returning back to the Iron Age, fascinating breakthroughs are happening in the field of ancient DNA analysis. Researchers from Bournemouth University and Trinity College Dublin have joined forces for a new study that sheds light on the structure of Iron Age society in Britain. You might remember our first ever news episode back in 2023 when we visited Bournemouth University's Summer Field School, led by old Time Team friend Dr. Miles Russell. During the Iron Age, Dorset was home to the Durotriges tribe, whose unique burial practices offer a rare opportunity to sample a sizable data set of DNA for analysis. The researchers retrieved over 50 ancient genomes from a set of burial grounds in use before and after the Roman conquest of AD 43. The results revealed a strong matriarchal link within the tribe. Dr. Lara Cassidy of Trinity College said, "This was a cemetery of a large kin group. We reconstructed a family tree with many different branches and found most members traced their maternal lineage back to a single woman who would have lived centuries before. In contrast, relationships through the father's line were almost absent." And she goes on to say, "This tells us that husbands moved to join their wives' communities upon marriage, with land potentially passed down through the female line. Written records speak of powerful women in Iron Age Britain, from Boudica to Cartimandua." And Miles Russell adds that archaeology and no genetics implies women were influential in many spheres of Iron Age life. The study was published in the Nature journal. See the link below. And finally, a tomb belonging to a royal doctor who served the Egyptian pharaoh's family some 4,000 years ago has been found at the City of the Dead near the stepped pyramid at Saqqara. Inscriptions at the richly adorned tomb have identified the occupant as Tetit Neb Fu, a chief doctor of the palace who was a priest and magician linked to the goddess Serket. Well, that's all for now. I'll see you again soon for more archaeology news and discoveries.
One story we brought you in the news last summer was the ongoing excavation of a medieval shipwreck off the Isle of Purbeck, just a few miles from this university. Lawrence and I went to sea back in June to observe firsthand the listing of some beautiful 13th century carved grave slabs. And just before Christmas, I went back to see how the conservation work was going. I've come down to the Mast Maritime facility where the grave slabs are currently being conserved, and I've not seen them since they were fresh out of the water last June, so I can't wait to see how Tom's getting on. Tom, here they are.
Here's the slabs.
This is looking amazing. So talk me through, what's going on here? Why are they still in water?
So with these, because they've been 750 in salt water, actually the stone's slightly porous, and this salt water can get into any fissures or between the beds. Salt crystals grow, they'll grow, and then they'll just smash apart the object. So we need to really slowly get that salt out and make sure all the salt's out before we dry it out, or we could risk losing surface details or even the whole stone splitting. So we just soak them in fresh water, change it every month or so, keep testing and testing and testing until we've got it the same pH and the same salinity level as our tap water. These are actually ready to be drained, to be dried, packed up, and then shipped off to the museum when it reopens.
So these are completely desalinated now. So since these have come out of the water, is there anything new we've learnt about them?
So we can actually see a lot more detail on here. So we can see the centre line coming up here.
It goes all the way.
All the way up to the top. And when you actually have these dried, and we've dried and like scanned to record to make 3D models, you can actually see all of these marks come up. So the actual mason's marks on this one, which is really cool. And we can see how they've made these perfect circles, how they've actually carved it. And we can sort of see that this one's actually, although it's got that centre line to make it symmetrical, the foot end of it's slightly out. So it's obviously something wrong with the bed, or they've rushed it, or they've messed up and gone, well, I'm not redoing it all for this little foot. So it's quite interesting to sort of see who's making these, what sort of skills they have.
And here's Tom Cousins, who's the lead archaeologist on the project here at Bournemouth University, to show us a few more wonderful things from the shipwreck. We've got a few here with us today, haven't we, Tom?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of mortars and a cauldron over there.
So talk me through, what is this and how would it be used?
So these are like kitchen mortars now. So it's basically the medieval version of a blender. So just sitting there pounding away. You probably had a wooden pestle rather than a stone one, because we've never found any of these pestles anywhere. Same if you want to do spices or paints, you can grind your paint up into a pigment in them. You can even make mortar for bricks and mortar. You grind up all of that stuff in there. So they basically use as multi-purpose. Anything you needed to mix and grind up smooth, you would do in one of these bowls.
I mean, they are monstrous artefacts. They're beautifully carved, and these ones didn't make it to their final destination. Where do these go? Where were they heading?
So they're literally everywhere. We get shipments, examples of them going by the 100. So we've got an Ipswich account of them going into 100 and being charged a penny tax per 100, and we have them into Europe as well, being imported by the 100. And we do find Purbeck marble examples in Denmark and in the Low Countries as well, and sometimes in France.
And talk to me about this cauldron. What are we actually looking at?
So that's probably the crew's cooking pot. So that's probably where they had their dinner. We don't actually know how they cooked at sea at this time period. When we go back to Sutton Hoo years, they always got camping equipment on there. So they're obviously stopping off somewhere at shore. They're not staying long times at sea. Whereas 13th century, the best evidence we have are pictures of them cooking on the back of whales for no apparent reason. They stop off at a convenient whale and set their cooking kit up there. So having a fire on a boat's obviously not a very fun thing to do. We're hoping we might find something maybe like a brick-lined area, so you could have a fire without risk of setting your boat on fire.
It was amazing to see you out on the boat lifting those stones, but what's next for the project?
So hopefully the main site is literally just a big pile of rubble, but underneath that's where the ship is. And that ship is what we want to try and do now is with our students is start to take those stones off to expose the ship. We can then record the ship. We'll probably recover it in sandbags just to keep it safe for the time being. But the ideal dream would be to raise the whole ship, record it in the lab, conserve it, and get it into the museum.
And am I right in thinking you've got an entire exhibition dedicated to you, Tom?
Not just to this wreck, but to about 5 or 6 other wrecks that we've all worked on.
Wow.
So, Yeah, so Poole Museum's going to be a whole maritime section on shipwrecks, but they're going to have other maritime galleries in there as well.
Oh, that's great. So all of our Time Team supporters and fans can go down to Poole Museum and see these materials in person.
Exactly.
Which sounds amazing.
We know you all love a classic 3-day dig, and you won't be disappointed as I can report that our latest 3-dayer, Norton Disney, is finally going into the edit.
In September last year, Time Team decamped to the Lincolnshire village of Norton Disney. Over 100 volunteers joined us in the search for a Norman manor house. We'd argue the original Disney castle. So hopefully out Easter springtime this year.
That is so exciting, I can't wait to see it.
Hugely exciting. But Time Team doesn't have to be just about assembling the biggest team possible. Sometimes small is better. Welcome to Time Team X Crew. It's got D on it. D for Derek. You've done it again, Lawrence. You've brought us to a forest in the middle of autumn. Where on earth are we and why are we here?
So we are currently walking in what was formerly Farley Moor. So we are just outside the Peak District National Park near Matlock, and we've got a pretty exciting site to look at. We're looking at a prehistoric standing stone. This is a site that's never been investigated before, and there are a few questions we need to ask. Is it Bronze Age? And more importantly, is it part of a larger monument?
So you've got some very clear aims there. How on earth are we going to do this?
Well, we've got a really discreet team in the form of yourself, Hilde and Naomi.
Yeah, my alarm did not go off.
And we are going to just target some really specific questions. We want to understand its composition, its structure, and its age.
So those are some really targeted questions. But what do we know about the site so far? I mean, I noticed John wasn't in your list. Have we had any geophysics done, any previous work?
So the site itself's never really been investigated. We've had a geophysical survey done in the form of magnetometry and resistivity, but they didn't really show us anything. But we've been really fortunate in this instance that the University of Sheffield have come along with their ground penetrating radar. So they're going to be doing a targeted survey around the stone to hopefully find some stone sockets or other associated features to this monument.
I mean, this is a team of 5 or 6 people. We turned up today in camper vans. We woke up to a lovely frosty morning. This feels like a proper expedition, doesn't it?
It's a proper expedition. Should we get on with it?
Yeah. And we are joined by Hilde, who was part of that expedition crew. What a nice time we had.
It was so fun. Like, all Time Team digs are really fun, but this was on a different level, I think.
Explain to us what Expedition Crew actually is in a nutshell.
So it's kind of like going on a bit of a side quest adventure with a merry band of archaeologists. So it's all about scaling it right back to its bare bones, taking a small team with a very specific skill set, so archaeologists, geophysicists, picking a site and then going out with a well-kitted out vehicle, camping on site, and then seeing what questions we can answer in 2 or 3 days. So yeah, very small scale, but very fun.
Ultimately, surgical strikes, getting in there and doing keyhole
Surgical
excavations.
strikes are like that.
And what sites are potentially on the list to be coming up?
So we've got a big list that needs whittling down. So we've got all sorts of different sites all over the country. We've got a Roman road, which is my favourite. We've got a possible Iron Age hill fort, a prehistoric quarry to do with Stonehenge, I believe, and there's loads more on. Yeah.
There's possibly a deserted medieval village. What else have we got on the list? Maybe an island site as well. Lots and lots of really interesting sites. But as you say, we really need help whittling it down, and we're going to draw in our Patreons and our supporters to help us decide which sites we're going to dig this year with the expedition crew. So watch this space. Now, we haven't yet mentioned the dark art of geophysics. We've got some colossal plans for this year, and here to tell us more is John Gator himself. John, how are you?
Good afternoon, Derek. Good to see you.
Oh, John, you look the picture of archaeology.
And a picture of health.
John, it's a shame.
I understand Helen runs while the podcast is on. I try to drink 3 pints of beer.
Only 3, John?
While the podcast's on.
Oh, John, so what have we got coming up in terms of geophysics this year and Time Team?
If you remember the last series of Time Team on Channel 4, back in 2013, we went to Brancaster, a Roman fort, and Jimmy did some amazing radar down the middle of the site. We'd done the complete fort with magnetics. We'd also looked at the Vicus, but the radar gave us stunning imagery of what's below the ground, a full 3D picture. But it was only a sample. And ever since that time, I've really wanted to go back and complete the whole survey. And I've been told we could well be going there in 2025 with Jimmy's new kit, high definition radar. And the idea is that we might be able to survey the whole fort and a bigger area and actually get a full 3D plan, and then using visualizations on the computer, walk through the site, getting a complete picture, walking through the streets, walking through the buildings, all without digging.
Now,
Geophysics at its best.
Now, this sounds like it's geophysics' time to shine. Is this going to be the big moment for geophysics and Time Team, John?
Well, I've been waiting over 10 years and I can't wait to go back. I hope it'll happen.
I cannot wait to see what you find, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
But there's one more thing about 2025. We're going back to Sutton Hoo.
Oh, thank you, John. And there it is, the cat's out of the bag. The big thing that we've been holding back. Probably the most iconic site in British archaeology, the biggest dig on our calendar last year, Sutton Hoo. And we're both proud and excited to tell you that we're going back.
Sutton Hoo!
That's the place with the big ship burial, right? Yeah, Basil Brown found it in 1939.
Huge thing. Anglo-Saxon.
88 foot.
This big.
A great warrior king was buried in it.
King Redwald.
Probably, but not necessarily.
And there was a Netflix film about it.
The Dig with Ralph Fiennes. There are 18
Anglo-Saxon burial mounds.
Could be more.
In the Royal Burial Mound.
And execution burials.
But that's not all. Under the visitor centre,
there's another cemetery.
With burials from the Bronze Age to the 6th century.
And that's not all.
They found Bronze Age pottery.
Neolithic flints and Iron Age field systems. And that's Sutton Hoo in 60 seconds.
How exciting.
I know, Sutton Hoo was amazing. And Hilde, you actually got to dig there.
Yes, I was there for 1 week and it was the best thing ever. It's one of those sites that archaeologists obviously dream of working on, and we got to be a very small part of a very big story.
And do you know what I was so happy that you did is you wore the Ray-Ban Metas so we could feel like we were digging as you. That was fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great new gadget.
It was super cool, and excavating the base of the bucket, and there was a moment where I got to see a face emerge from the dust. It was an absolute bucket list experience. And we are happy to announce that we have 3 special Time Team episodes covering the entirety of the 2024 dig for release on YouTube in May as a prelude to our return.
But it's not just about us. Sutton Hoo is about you.
For many of us, the biggest thrill was being able to meet so many of you and the viewers and Patreon supporters on site, and to see how excited you all were.
And here to talk about what we have in store for you this year is team member and community archaeologist Dani Wootton. Now, Dani, wasn't it so great to have so many visitors involved?
Hi, yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. I think we had about 40 volunteers, 40 Patreon volunteers. And it was just amazing. We had a full week and we excavated about 13 test pits over that week. It was week 3. And it was just, like you say, a wonderful opportunity, wasn't it, Hilde, to actually be able to excavate at Sutton Hoo? I mean, that was amazing. Dream come true for the archaeologists, but I think also for the volunteers as well.
Absolutely. And do you have some visitors with you now?
I do. I'm joined by our Patreon volunteers from last year, Jason and Nigel, who excavated in Test Pit 6 and Test Pit 3. What would you say your highlights were?
For me, it was meeting new people and getting to actually dig at Sutton Hoo. I mean, what else? I mean, Sutton Hoo. Who'd have think?
I think it was definitely the fellowship of Time Team fans. The fact that we could all come together, talk about Time Team and dig at Sutton Hoo.
I know, it was amazing, wasn't it? And I think what's wonderful there is that you've touched on, it's about community. So obviously the archaeology is really important, but it's also the community as well, isn't it? That kind of fellowship, that family kind of atmosphere that you get when you excavate. And haven't you actually, you're all still in touch, aren't you?
Yes, Test Pit 3, and we also done Test Pit 21 as well. We've got a WhatsApp group. It's one of the busiest WhatsApp groups I know, which is saying something. We're in constant communication, have been today, talking about this, and we're constantly doing stuff. We're even going to have a reunion in March to keep it all going.
Amazing. And has it inspired you to go on and do any more archaeology?
Yeah, for me it has. I signed up with my local archaeology group, did a dig in late August, and hopefully going to do another one next year.
That's fantastic. And what would you say, what was your favourite find? Any amazing discoveries while you were excavating?
We were very lucky in our pit. We found a fabulous Neolithic blade. I think it was Neolithic, hasn't been dated yet, but it was an absolutely beautiful translucent chip from a core, and that was just magical.
It's always wonderful, isn't it, when you find something for the first time, you're the first person to see that. Would you recommend to volunteers come in this year that it's a good experience?
Absolutely, really worth it. I mean, it's something that you always remember. You always think back to it. It's something you're never going to forget. I do recommend sun cream and knee pads.
Knee pads, yeah, absolutely. And probably waterproofs as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And have you enjoyed being Patreons then? Do you think it's worth joining up as a Patreon?
Oh, definitely. I mean, you just won't get a chance to do anything like this if you're not a Patreon, realistically. I mean, you know, what more can you possibly ask for? There's so many other things you could be doing, but buy a Patreon subscription and it'll work for you.
Fantastic. What I really love about it, Derek, is that we're able to train volunteers up who then can go on and take part in more excavations and learn more about archaeology. It's really wonderful, isn't it?
I mean, it sounds like an amazing experience. So, Dani, how can people get involved this year?
Well, we will be releasing full details soon. Firstly, on our Patreon channel. So the one is for Patreons to actually look out for that, and we'll be putting out full details soon.
Fantastic. Well, that's all we have time for, and I'm sure you'll agree there's a feast of archaeology coming your way.
Before we go, can we say a big thank you to all our Patreon supporters out there, without whom none of this would be possible.
And a huge thanks to the amazing Bournemouth students who have been brilliant in helping us put the show together.
Finally, thanks to all of you watching out there. We hope you enjoy this new show and let us know what you think in the comments.
Make sure you subscribe to the Time Team official YouTube channel and you won't miss any releases. And please do consider supporting us in whatever way you can. See you soon.
Bye.